let's actually move. Here, I can show you this, and I can share this with you so you can actually see the screen. So as I'm discussing it, you can see it. Okay, so I think it'll be better just to move through it like this because I'm going to be screen sharing either way. So I'll just start from here. All right. So it's basically talking about, well, obviously mobile optimization, right? Mm-hmm. Mobile optimization is something that is a consideration that's crossed a lot of people's mind given the popularity. And so you ask a lot of different questions like, why do I need to go mobile? It can be for a number of reasons. You can say, I want to make a better design. I want to do it for my industry. I want it for SEO, increase the number of conversions and traffic and so forth. But like now, the number one reason to actually go mobile is primarily because it's required. It's not even an option. So you can have preferences and you can have reasons, but the reasons are almost second place to the fact that it's required if you're going to expect any sort of results out of the site that you're creating, and if you want to generate any sort of, I guess, customers from it. Of course. So I think it's very much known that mobile is important, and I won't go through a million bits of stats, but before we actually get into the design part and a little bit about how to go mobile, then I'll just, for those who are new, just say there's a number of reasons. One being there's a lot of different types of devices, and Google, if you go to thinkwithgoogle.com, you can actually see that thinkwithgoogle.com, they have a number of stats from around the world that show as of now the number of devices per person is up to about 2.9 devices per person. So it's a fairly diversified number of devices in people's possessions these days. Also, smartphone usage is growing. Before it was just computers and laptops, but today over 60% of respondents say that they use their smartphone for very involved purposes. And tablets are also growing as well. And not just young users. So it doesn't matter who your demographic is or who your target market is. It's really important because if you take a look at this chart, 66% of individuals 55 and older said that they use a mobile device to make purchases and in their everyday lives. And moving forward, people do a lot. So it's not only that there are a diverse number of devices that you have to kind of navigate, and also it's not only the fact that smartphones are prevalent, and it's not only the fact that age is almost a non-factor now because everyone's using them. It's also the fact that people are using them to make purchases. So there's like an offline-online relationship between purchases and online research. So, those are some of the stats, right? No wonder why we see things like that. That's a Forbes article that was published last year. Basically says like no mobile site lost customers, and why Google's making such a big effort out of it. So now moving on, this is, I guess, the crux and the part that most people, I guess, are tuning in for. It's primarily to see a few of these considerations. So the first thing that I guess we're going to go through is design considerations. Design considerations, they're plenty. There are plenty to consider, but as of right now, I think some of the most fundamental considerations and misconceptions lie in construction of a homepage, the UX of the homepage, in getting people to actually engage and finish forms online. And so there's certain things that are fundamental for form completion. And e-commerce, if you have an e-commerce site and you want to sell things, there's certain things that you should have implemented or you should have in place. So next is creating. So if you're going to be creating a site, Well, there are way too many different types of code to actually go over in full. So I think it's best to actually go through the resources that you can be guided to, some CMS steps, that being content management system, because those are the easiest ways for smaller, medium-sized businesses, even entrepreneurs, to create really dynamic, effective websites that are easy to translate into mobile. And then some things that are related to after you create your website, you need to check things like your analytics. You need to make sure that all tracking code is in place in order for you to get proper data. So after creating considerations, then do a comparison of the 3 types of mobile, and then compare HTML and URL of all of those various types and see which one is best, which one's Google preferred method, and then finally common mistakes. And this is a good part because there's a lot of mistakes that are made. You know, you can see the site, it'll look great, and it actually will not. It'll be hard to really find and pinpoint some of these issues with content and media, site structure, such as like 401 redirects and pages not linking up properly, and site speed. Figuring out, you can have a quick desktop site, but if the mobile site's slow, that's much more likely to drop customers than a desktop site. So then Q&A. So first, going on design considerations. If you were to consider design of a homepage as the first thing that really needs to stand out, it's really the most crucial part, and it should be given the most time, because that's where a lot of people are going to go. Vast majority of traffic, over 70% of traffic, will go there, and then you'll have a lot of individuals either drop or continue from there. And there's not a lot of room to do things on a mobile site, so you got to pick and choose, kind of. So first thing to actually focus on is a call to action. So a call to action, you know, if you have a number of different things going on, like sales, promotions, or some information on your homepage, any number of different things that you want to have accomplished with your homepage on a desktop, well, you need to kind of like prioritize and then place call to action as atop those priorities, because it has to be clear above the fold and as one of the be shown as one of the first things that a user is guided towards. So have some contrasting color that makes it stand out. Then menus. So the menus, there are a lot of menus that you can include. Right? It's very important to be precise with menus. UX design, proper UX says on a desktop you should have a very robust menu categorization, but on mobile you should keep it concise and really decrease the number of menu options that you have. Consider, what is the reason why my customers are going to come to my mobile site? Are they going to want to do much beyond just fulfilling my call to action, calling me, or finding my address? And if there are a few other items, that's fine, place those on there. But if they're not, really just kind of cut the fat. And then moving on for info. So there's a lot of info on pages, on home pages. You go to anyone's homepage and they're going to talk about their mission statement, or sometimes they'll talk about some of the services that they offer. We have customer testimonials and so forth. But you kind of need to delete a lot of it, because when you're on a mobile page, there's only so much space. And if you're going to prioritize it as a matter of importance, the call to action and the menus that you feel relevant, those are more important than the excess information. If they want to know about your site, you should put that on an about site so that they can go there with a directed purpose. And then promotions. See, promotions are fine, but only to the extent that they don't take away from a call to action. Like, say, if you want to capture somebody's email, or if you want to get them to call you, or if you want to get them to drive to your store. Maybe if you're a clothing outlet, or you're selling some shoes or something at an actual storefront, then you don't want the promo to distract them, because if people go down a road, they tend to not really come back that often to the homepage, so they won't fulfill your guided journey to that call to action. So make sure the promos are distinct. Make sure it's clear that the sales promo is different from the call to action, and that the call to action is much more prominent. And then it's really important to make it easier for people to get back to the homepage, because if they don't know how to get back to the homepage, say if they happen to go down that road for promos, even though it is contrasted sufficiently, then they need to have some breadcrumbs atop the page in order to get back. So so some examples of good home pages. Well, if you see the actual sale is contrasted from some of the other locations, so it's sufficiently clear that the sale is a separate thing from the other buttons and the other icons, and depending on this person's business model, it might be that they want them to go with their sort of interests and desires first, beyond or before resorting to the sale button. So those are contrasted. And then like this, it's not really contrasted. And so if you have sale and then you have savings pass, and then there are other items mixed in, that's not really a good mixture combination. But here, this is very clear. You can see when you're coming, there is a note of savings at the top, and that's, you know that they want you to understand that they're cheaper than the competitors, but they also have a clear direction to the call to action. It's all white space in the back, and then there is a get a quote button. It's clear what they want you to do. And right here, you can see the breadcrumbs. So if they go down that, like I said earlier, they go down that path that you don't want them to go, you want them to be able to easily get back to the home page, which is where you should make the hub of your goals. So that's just the home page in general. And then there are many more items that are to be considered for mobile shopping experience, because so if you have a service, that's one thing. Say if you're I don't know, you provide massages, or you provide a number of different like website design or whatever, a service that's different from actual shopping experience, because e-commerce, you need to get people past that ZMOP point that Google talks about, that zero moment of interest, because people are going to look around and they're going to shop around and they're going to click on and off websites sort of habitually. But in order to get them past that final checkout stage and not abandon your cart, you need to make sure that there are certain things that make it convenient on the site. And so I won't go into too much detail, because a lot of e-commerce sites have very specific business models and very large inventories. And so a lot of the detail will have to be decided in-house. But no matter what your actual business model, no matter what you're trying to accomplish with an e-commerce site, it's very important to allow guest sign-in. Sometimes, it's okay to not allow guest sign-in on desktop sites. You might want to direct them for email capture or for like loyalty points or whatnot. But on mobile phones, you got to start from the premise that it's inherently inconvenient. Small screen, it's hard to kind of navigate with the thumbs unless they have a phablet. Even then, it might be a little bit difficult as well. And so you have to say, okay, give them that one sort of pass and allow them to go with guest sign-in, and don't coerce them into signing in before they can do anything. So click to call, that's a very convenient option to have, because if you have a prominent click to call, the moment an individual feels frustrated with the digital experience, and no matter how much time you put into UX and development and contemplating the type of layout that you have, there's always going to be something that somebody doesn't like. So they feel that it's too much and they want to speak to a human. Well, if you have the prominent click to call, then that may save the sale. because you can then find it right at the moment when they're about to leave. Find them right when they're about to leave. So the next option, or that is almost a must to integrate, is share options. They're very important on desktop, but desktop there's a lot of space and there's a lot of things that you can do. But for mobile, it's very much in the culture of a mobile experience to use social media. So the percentage of users who are on mobile who will share clothes that they like on Pinterest, or who will share a pair of shoes that they saw on Facebook, is significantly higher. So share options being ready and available, those will give you much more added value. And a search bar. It's kind of seems like common sense, but a search bar and proper investment in a good index to sort of back up that search bar and to lead people to good search results is really non-negotiable, because when you're on a mobile device, it is much more likely that they have either just a mentality to browse around, shop around, or they're going to be in the mood to actually purchase something. And if they have something particular in mind, and they don't have the open space that they have on a desktop to actually navigate to what they're trying to find, well, again, it's going to ruin the customer experience, and they're going to want to resort to something else, and they can resort to the search bar if it's open and available. And so that's for the mobile shopping experience. Then there's other considerations on, if you're trying to, some people try to get sales for an online website. Other people actually try to get emails, and other people try to get others to download white papers. They have a number of different business objectives and their goals. So if a conversion for you is in the form of information and form completion, well, there's a couple of things to actually consider. And it's not so much a sort of like a really unknown thing when it comes to form completion, what I'm about to mention, but it's what you don't really see on a lot of different sites, and it's kind of unfortunate. So when you consider number entry, a calendar, and radio buttons, so they have a mobile alternative for those options. If you leave them to just the phone option, it becomes a difficult task for them to not only fill in their address and to make it from top to all the way to the bottom, where they got to enter their credit card number, or they got to enter in date of birth, or whatever else they're trying to enter. It makes it difficult if they don't have large fonts that pop out and that give them that convenient mobile experience. So within the Think with Google website, they have a study, and they just controlled for these particular icons and these particular designs. And when these designs were present, users were 42% more likely to actually complete a form, as opposed to when they weren't present. So it's a larger percentage. It's not going to make or break you, but it actually it stands to make the website a lot more beneficial. So form completion, just consider these three particular items, mobile design items. So those are design considerations. Then if you move to creating, right? So when you create a site, before you create the site, and it's really important to give thought to user experience, and that's UX. And so if you have all of that completed already, and you take those different thoughts into consideration, then you get to this point. if you're creating a site, there's so many different ways. When I thought about, well, what kind of advice or what kind of resources can I offer? I thought there's so many different ways that people can go about creating a mobile site that it's not worth trying to actually address every single one of them. As opposed to doing that, I just thought about the most popular forms of mobile site creation. And this is in particular if you're using like a content management system. So it's much easier to actually take those off and locally host, like download all of the information, locally host it, develop it, and then put it up on a server. And so for actually creating this type of a site on a CMS type of software, that Google actually has some resources and some steps. And so step one in actually doing that, it's really simple and it's very obvious, but it's actually just to back up the site, because when you create a mobile version of a site, it oftentimes creates issues, especially if you have an e-commerce site. And so backing up the site is a very fundamental item on the checklist, because you can lose so much, not only from your mobile site and mobile design, you can botch that, but also you can mess up what you had with your desktop as well. So so that's really step one. Then you go on to say updating CMS software, because say if you have WordPress, then if you're trying to determine whether or not you have a mobile site already, because some people have it in place and they don't even know it because their site is responsive. And if you're trying to determine that, but you haven't updated your software, well, you won't really be able to know whether it's much easier than going the route that we're about to discuss. So if you update the software and then you test it, and it turns out that the updated form of that software does offer responsive website design, then that makes things a lot easier. Aside from, if there is the exception that if it does update and it makes it mobile optimized, that you see the site and it's still not sufficient, well, at that point you can take further steps to then implement some of the design considerations that were discussed before, and to I guess to make the design and the user experience much better. So definitely update and then go on to trying to switch. So if you back it up, you'll be safe in conscience, knowing that all this, you can revert back to where you initially started, and you can try again. And then if you update it, then you can be very sound in knowing that it wasn't just as easy as an update. And then if you did both of those and you found it wasn't that easy, then you can say, okay, I'm going to go on and try to switch to a mobile responsive theme. So there's different ways to do it in different forms of software, and this is one of the links that I included on the site that I mentioned in the beginning. That's what the little WordPress icon stands for. But in particular, all of these different types of software, if this is what you host your site on, there are very particular instructions about switching on a mobile theme for the software located in Google Developer Site. And when you go there, it can be as simple as downloading a plugin, or as because it's always simple, or as simple as just switching on the theme. And so when you're trying to make that switch, definitely visit the Google Developer Site, and they actually have a GOMO team that is available for you to actually consult with if there are issues that you encounter with sites such as this. So these sites, put a bit of a caveat on this, and make it clear that these sites and this option to simply switch is relevant only to a responsive mobile website. So we'll get into sort of like the difference between responsive and dynamic and different and separate URL sites, but this is only if it's offered through your content management system and or software. But if you have just a separately built site, maybe it was built by a third party a couple of years back, maybe it was built with an older form of HTML, or maybe it was built with some type of code that just won't that doesn't offer an easy mobile switchover, then that's when you'll have to move on to either a dynamic or a separate URL, most likely a separate URL option. And that'll be elaborated on in just a sec. So again, step one, back up the site, make sure everything's all safe so that you can revert and go back if you screw everything up. Then step two, go to the actual site to make sure that the update doesn't automatically make the site mobile optimized, and then go and figure out which software or which CMS you're using, and follow the steps. Most of them are very simple if you want to use it for responsive purposes. And then you can test the site. And then, so if you go onto the site again that I mentioned in the beginning, Google offers a mobile-friendly test site, and it's one of the biggest resources that I can actually mention in this, because you will not only figure out from Google whether or not your site is being indexed as mobile-friendly, but you will also be able to receive some feedback from them as to some of the issues that are keeping your site from being mobile friendly if it is found that it's not. So for instance, you go on, you enter your URL, and it says that they're not able to crawl some of your video, that the Google bot is not able to access your video, it's not able to access some of your other content. And after analyzing and after determining that your site's not mobile friendly, it'll give you some feedback, and you'll be able to go as far along as contacting one of those GOMO consultants that will be able to assist. So then going to page speed. So if you're going to test the site, because there comes a point when you think about sort of like the aesthetics of the site, and you think, well, it looks great. It looks like it is very much so a complete site. The colors are right, the buttons are in place, the wording is proper and perfect. But if the page speed is slow, then none of that's going to matter, because people will fall off very quickly, and you'll have high bounce rates, or you'll just have very, very short sessions on your site. So after you test it, then there's other areas to consider. So mentioned earlier, and I'll be going over this again like in a second, but for now I'll just gloss over it a bit. So considering mobile ads, are your ads, do you need to add new code to the site? Like, do you need to, if you're creating a separate URL site, do you need to place that URL in Webmaster Tools and verify that mobile site? So do you need to go to Webmaster Tools, get a meta tag, and place it in the site in order to get it indexed? Do you need to create a new mobile sitemap, or do you need to adjust a lot of your content so that the content is usable on cell phones, or analytics tracking? Do you have different goals for your mobile site versus your tablet users versus your desktop users? So you have to determine what your goals are and whether or not you need to update and refresh and visit analytics to change out some code. So okay, so right now I think this is kind of like I guess an important thing for some of the business owners, because I think most people, even though they see the information initially about design and about steps, they won't really take the steps to do it themselves. Some people won't, some people will. But if it I think this is really important. This slide right here is important if you're going to consider contracting with sort of a third party, or if you're going to consider going with the free option. If you're going to go online and have a mobile site created for you, because there are a lot of great sounding options out there, a lot of cheap sounding options that sometimes won't be as beneficial as some of the options that we're about to go through right now, the Google preferred option. And I guess this information will enable a lot of people to ask the right questions and to get most pertinent answers. So, and 3 types of mobile, that's also found in that site as well. So why care about the 3 types of mobile, or the difference in mobile sites, right? You might ask yourself, well, they're all mobile sites. They all appear on my phone. What's the difference? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is the time, effort, and the fluidity with which the site will connect to the Google server, or to the Google index. So how easy is it for it to be crawled, and how much work and time do you have to put in sort of changing out some content. So I'll start just from the best option, and that's the responsive. So if you see here, you'll see a difference in these different pictures and these from different slides, and these are again from Google. But you can see right here that the HTML is the same in the middle, and then also the URL is the same, all for the desktop, tablet, as well as mobile phone. So that's responsive web design. And without getting into the exact details, I'll mention a bit of HTML later for some people who might want to implement it themselves. But what makes this distinct is the fact that it has the same URL, and it also uses the same HTML. And so that, I guess I can simply say, is the most efficient way of creating a mobile optimized site. And so this is the exact definition that I'm going with. And so it's essentially a setup where the servers always sends the same HTML code to all the devices, and the CSS is used to alter the rendering of the page. So basically, you don't do a lot of work on the function, on the HTML of the site. Rather, you go to the design and CSS, and those who know a lot about CSS, or even a little bit, just know that its core purpose is to make design efficient. And so you can make some changes in the CSS, and it will allow you to not make a lot of changes elsewhere. And so this is a really big benefit. It's that Google's algorithms, they should be able to automatically detect the setup if the Googlebot user agents are allowed to crawl the pages. So we'll talk about this a little bit later in the common problems, but that's a big if. You gotta make sure that the Googlebot is allowed, and that the robots.txt file isn't preventing them somehow, or somehow there isn't some sort of a conflict with some of the HTML that you're using, or Flash, or whatever different type of code. So let's see. Why is it recommended? These are the primary benefits, aside from it being automatically detected. So it makes it easier. So like if you share a link, you won't have to share separate links, because the link that they're sharing is, if it's placed into a cell phone, it's going to be detected as such, and it's going to become responsive at that point and adjust to the cell phone. And it's on the single URL, and then less technical knowledge required. And so it's, like I said earlier, it makes the indexing easier, and it reduces load time. So it also makes it a bit faster. And this is the option that a lot of the content management systems offer. They'll offer the responsive theme option so that it makes it much more convenient. So a bit of sort of some advanced HTML, like the meta viewport tag is the primary way that you, or is the primary tag that you want to pay attention to if you're going to be adjusting the CSS. And so this is essentially the viewport tag that you use, and you also have options to put a limit, or if you want to make a max size for the scale, and you can adjust that according to, say, if you have different devices that are used more than others and you found that through analytics, then you can use some of these descriptive scale tags as well, and alter the viewport tag. But for most purposes, the above inserted, or the above included meta tag, that will work for actually keeping your making your CSS responsive. So that can be found at the site that's listed there. And so if anybody wants to kind of go into it and try to make the adjustment themselves, and if they have their site backed up, then it might be something that is worth doing, or they can just get a freelancer or somebody to do it. So, but in any case, so the second one is just dynamic serving. Dynamic serving is, it's called dynamic because there's different HTML codes, coding that's involved. So the server pulls from two different sources, different HTML, but the same URL. And so it's not as bad as the separate URLs, but it does have one minor setback in that there's more code involved, and it's not as streamlined. So dynamic serving is a setup where the server responds with different HTML and CSS on the same URL depending on the user agent requesting the page. So I think that is sort of like you see the path from single site, single HTML, single URL, to having different forms of HTML and different website or different URLs. So this is what you see a lot of, because this is the free option. This is the option that doesn't involve somebody accessing the customer's site. So meaning, like, if you hire a third party, you contract with them, they don't have to get your internet, your back end codes, and they don't have to have access to any of your servers. They don't have to have access to any of your property. They can create an actual site outside of your site, and you'll have to go in later and insert a meta tag, and some of that can be done by you or by them, but this is easier for third parties, and a lot of people actually opt for offering this because it's more convenient for a company to do a mobile website this way. So this is why I said in the beginning, you're an informed consumer when you kind of know this, when you know the difference, because you don't just take all mobile websites to be created equally. You'll be able to see what they're offering you and say, well, I don't want a separate URL with separate HTML that's going to increase the likelihood of having issues. You can ask them about responsive options. And so again, those have different HTML markups, and those have different URLs. And this is the definition. In this configuration, each desktop URL has an equivalent different URL serving mobile optimized content. So pulling from different sources, different code, and for having a different URL. And so that also complicates things much more in the way of analytics as well, because now you have to be able to distinguish, and you have to sort of plan for two different URLs. So if you have worked with analytics or webmaster tools before, and you want to do some SEO based on the number of searches that are coming your way, you know that if you have www.yoursite.com versus yoursite.com, that makes a difference, and you have to have a preferred site. And so if you add another m.yoursite.com, that's going to allow for further analysis. It's going to require further analysis. So the last thing is just common mistakes. Common mistakes, and this is where I'll finish up and wrap up, and it's just a walk through block JavaScript and just CSS and image files and non-playable media, primarily YouTube and Flash, and faulty redirects. So if you have sort of 401 that points to a home page, that's going to significantly deduct from your SEO campaigns, or it's going to significantly affect your overall ranking, even if you're not engaged in active sort of SEO content campaign or things of that nature. So faulty redirects, those are things to watch for and be vigilant of. And then you go to slow mobile pages. The slow mobile pages, those are easy to address at times, but you want to know how quick your site is, because that's a large factor in user experience and also in ranking. So if you consider the issue with some of the index blockage, first one is the Googlebot's not able to access. And so if you have that issue, and I guess it's kind of like a chicken and egg type issue, because when you have it, you might need to already have the solution in order to kind of know it. So what I mean is, if you're familiar with webmaster tools, you go in, you register your website, and you verify it, and it will tell you if there's issues with your URL. So every time Google tries to come and search and crawl your site, then they'll tell you every time they run into some sort of a block. And that's an indication that you need to make some changes to select pages, a certain few pages. And then a robots.txt file, you can also find out that information and determine whether or not there are, maybe you have included a lot of some people like to put their 401 redirects into their robots.txt file. And if you place some information that is valuable, or maybe maybe you didn't mean to, but it just ended up there, you need to be notified that that mistake was made, and that's going to be possible by checking the status of your robots.txt file through Webmaster Tools. And also you can, again, take the mobile friendly test, and Google will tell you what's blocked and what's not, and they'll give you some recommendations about how you can address those issues. So you want to make sure all your info is crawlable, and just because it's on the mobile site and the homepage looks good, you want to make sure that you're not taking that assumption and cross-applying it to all the pages. So make sure the whole site is mobile friendly. And then content. So you can have a lot of your images rendering. You can have a lot of different elements of your site rendering, but if you don't have a YouTube video that plays, or if you don't have a piece of Flash content that plays, well, those are due to two primary sources. First is for the Flash, if you actually have a video, or if you have something that is compiled with a non-compatible form of code, then you need to make it transfer to HTML5, or ask somebody if they can write it in HTML5, because HTML5 standard code is acceptable for all forms of mobile devices. So that is what you want your content to be written in. And if you're considering issues for YouTube, a lot of people don't know because they can watch their, like say if you create a promotional, or say if you create a video of you and your friends doing something, whatnot, and you have music in the background, you could play it on the desktop, but when you go onto your phone, you'll find that you can't play it on the phone. And when that happens, it's a content a rights issue. So if you don't have rights to that song, and say like UMD flagged it as basically being their property, then you're not going to be able to play it on the phone, and you're going to need to either change the music or completely change the video. And if you want to take the step of taking your Flash or unplayable videos and transferring them, or creating them with HTML5 standard, then you can use Google Web Developer. It's a downloadable platform that you can actually that makes it very easy to well, not easy, but it makes it much more convenient to create content for your site. And also you're able to do that with the assurance that everything you create in the way of content is going to be HTML5 standards compatible. So so that's another big issue. But then we move on to redirects. So redirects, again, when you have different sites built, or if you have a different maybe business name that you're trying to brand, and that's a different URL, and if you don't have the webmaster tools in place, and you're not able to figure out whether or not there are issues with those redirects, that's going to be a big problem going forward. So that's something that needs to be constantly monitored. But the biggest and easiest way to address that issue is just to switch to responsive, because if you have the 403 correct pages that are showing on desktops but not for mobile, or say if you have a page that's cross-rendering, so say if it's supposed to go to a shoes category but it goes to your home page, then that's if it's on mobile, that's due to the fact that it is two separate URLs. And so if you have a responsive site, then they're going to be on the same URL, and those will be streamlined. Not necessarily if you're creating a different name URL, but it'll eliminate all the issues that exist between your desktop URL and your mobile URL. So I want to watch for that. And then the last thing is speed. So if you have an issue with speed, you'll kind of know it intuitively if you visit your site, but sometimes the connection or the location that you're in doesn't render equally, or doesn't load equally compared to another person in another location. So checking site speed on Google's speed checker is a very, very fundamental step as well, and that keeps you from having a slow site and losing a lot of customers and not knowing it. So and there's a great article, and I kind of defer to Brian McCade, and so there's a great article called "Make Your Mobile Page Load in 1 Second," and that's also included in that link that was shown in the beginning of the presentation. So that is basically it. And again, all the links, they're going to be included they're going to be found on that page on the bottom. And that is it. I am going to start fielding some questions.